Yes.
Whoa, a tech master. Baruch Hashem. Okay. That was like amazing. Okay.
Well, you're far better than me.
Okay. That was like a nace. Okay. If you wanted to know a miracle, you just saw one. All right. So here's the story. Okay. So we're just going to do a quick review. So we were at the point where we said last week, like the soul and journeys to 11 different places. And what we said is when you pass on, your first journey or your first din, like your first encounter with, oh my gosh, I have passed on, okay, is from wherever you were passed on, if it was a hospital or your home, until you get to the kever, right? Until you're going to get to where you're going to be buried, okay? And from there, hold on, I just want to make sure I do not lose the thoughts, right? We said there were 11 stops. Okay, so from that one, we said, let me just go slowly. Okay, yeah. From there, we said every single person is going to have to go through some kind of a Gehenna. Okay, remember we said for some people it might just be a little hot flash, and for some people it may be a stayover, and for some people they are so amazing there's nothing to worry about. Hashem's going to shut off the fire, and you're just going to go through. Okay, it's like a subway train that you have to make these stops. That's how it goes. Then we said there's something called the lower level of Gan Eden. Then we said, just like you walk around the chuppah, you go around 7 times, like the bride goes around the groom 7 times for the 7 levels of heaven. You'll go through these 7 levels of heaven. And then finally, you're supposed to get to this highest level of Gan Eden. So again, these are thoughts and ideas. Can we actually put our hands on them? No, because we're talking about a whole spiritual realm that we don't really know. But what do we know? It's a place of incredible joy for the soul, and it's a place of reward. Okay, now, what's the issue that we said is going to stand in your way? What's going to really stand in your way through the journey is how attached your body was to this world. The more physical you were, okay, the harder it's going to be to separate, and the harder it's going to be to journey through these 11 places. And that's the MS. And you want to know something really beautiful? Like, I thought about it. A lot of us, we do make mistakes, and we can be very physical. And a lot of the friends and people we know really lead a life that is almost spiritually void. And and you feel bad, like you stop and you think about what's going to be with these people. So one thing you have to know, that Hashem wants everyone to experience Gan Eden, right? Kol Yisrael yesh lahem chelek la'olam haba. God made it that every one of us should have a place in the world to come. In order for that to happen, there are, what we always say, consequences to your actions. True or false?
True.
And without consequences, if we really stopped for a whole second to admit the truth, if there was no consequence to your action, honestly, you're irrelevant. And you would feel no purpose, and you would feel no meaning. I'm being real. You really would. If what you did didn't really matter, then you don't matter. Right? So Hashem is saying, I'm giving you the greatest gift. You matter. But I do want for you an amazing reality of spirituality. If you worked hard during this time, and you were like what I call most of us, a work in progress, really, we had our head in a certain place, and we really did want to do what was right. It was hard. Yetzer Hara pulled you here. This way you got distracted here. Everywhere you were, you know what I mean? We're human, and it was difficult, right? So what does the Torah tell you? You attach. Remember we said with everything that you do, you create a malach. You create some kind of an angel, some kind of a spiritual force. So they say right before you're going to be buried into this grave, guess what? All your angels, we said, jump in, okay? You're taking with you the positive, the negative. You're taking with you all the energy that you produce that's good, and all the negative energy that clings to you. And they use the word klipot, which means like a peel. And it's very funny because sometimes when you look at an apple, right, you usually you look at an apple, you look at a pear, right? So we qualify them, it's very interesting. You'll say a red apple, a green apple. But what's really the joke of jokes? When you take the peel off, which is this teeny tiny thing, it's not a lot. What color is the apple? It's not.
White.
Right? It's not at all red. It's like the same thing with a pear. It's not at all green. All of these things are not what they seem on the outside. So sometimes like we've collected a peel, all right, a physical peel, all right, that really is not who we are on the inside. And so what's going to happen is before you get to this Gan Eden, where you're really going to be your authentic spiritual self, this peel is going to have to be taken off. Okay. And that, like, just think about generally, right? When you have to repair something, usually it's going to be a little bit of pounding and it's going to be a little bit of work. It's not something that's just going to be a simple la la la. Okay. Which is fine. You know why? Because it was your actions that caused that shell. Do you know what I mean? And now we have to get the shell off. So we're going to talk about how to get the shell off. And if there's anything we can do before we pass on to limit that reality. Okay.
It's
So
like the eagle.
say that again.
It's like the eagle. When he starts new life, he has to break
Oh,
all
yes,
his
he has to break
nails.
his beak and all this. Yes, you're right. You're right. Okay, perfect. So let's just take a look at what else we said. I just want to hold on a minute. Which is,
Gail,
yes.
just to go along with your analogy that I really, really like, is
Okay.
that maybe the apple is white inside. Maybe all the apples are white inside, but they have a tinge of what the red or the green was.
Okay, so that's so interesting that you said that. So what does that remind me of? What does that remind me of, Sandy? That reminds me of this idea.
That means that what our outside body does affects our soul.
It does affect you. And that's what reminds you, like when it says like there's this Roshem left, like this little imprint that's
Right.
left. And that's, yeah, that's what you're saying. It does affect you. Right. So really what's going to happen is Hashem is going to try to help you as much as possible get rid of that peel so that you can continue journeying. Right. So it's not necessarily a pleasant experience. Like, you know, the laundry in the washing machine doesn't look like it's having a good time. It's getting tumbled and pumbled and schmumbled. Right.
But if it's a green apple, it's going to be a little bit more sour. And if it's a red
Right.
apple, it's
Yes,
going to be.
so it did
So
affect
our
you.
soul has that we have
Yes,
to
and we're
work
gonna
through.
Yeah,
Exactly.
but the peeling is the same. If you peel an apple or cucumber or
Yes.
this, it's hard.
Yes,
It hurts.
exactly. It hurts. That is part of the reality that we do have to appreciate. Okay. So now what did we say? We said that it's interesting. Like, I'm really getting this feeling I want to make aliyah. Okay. Because when you learn this, you really, whoa. Okay. So being buried in Eretz Yisrael, we said is a schus. It's really a merit. It really is. And it really helps a lot with this and a lot with this reality, and it's a big merit to be married there. Remember we said Trias Amesim starts from Har Hazesim, and we said it's like prime real estate. It's literally prime real estate. Do you know what I mean? To be buried there. Okay, so now we're actually going to talk about something that is an interesting topic. I really found it very interesting, and that is this concept, you know, to where you're going to be buried. And I don't think we think about it very much. Like in many ways.
To say something, even if you die here, you can still be buried in Israel.
Yes, you can. And even when we said like one of the biggest
So
mitzvahs, right,
yeah.
is to bury you very quickly, right? Because they say it's very, very hard on the soul and it's confused and what's going on.
It's
So
the most
definitely-
expensive air ticket.
Yes, most expensive everything is
Yeah.
to be buried, but you can postpone the burial under two conditions. It's very interesting. One is to be buried in Israel, and the other one is to be buried with your family. Like, you know what? I feel badly that I never thought of any of this. Like, I don't know if I never thought of any of this. Like this concept of a family plot, like, you know, Shoshana, like where your mother and your father are buried. Yeah. Like, do you have any shaykhs to that area at all? Or like, are you buried with your shul? No, I can't hear you. You have to unmute. I'm very curious.
They're not buried in the same cemetery
They're
because
not
my
buried in
mother
the same-
remarried.
Okay, so
So
that's
she's
even a
buried with her
shaila
second
here. I'm
husband.
going to tell you there's a shaila where you get buried with, who you get. Like, it's unbelievable. This whole thing is unbelievable, but it's a very interesting thing. If any of you have a situation where your parents are buried in a certain place, if you want, there is a concept to be buried with your mishpacha. Like, it's just an interesting idea. If you get buried in Eretz Yisrael, that's always, better, because your mishpacha is in Eretz Yisrael no matter what. Do you know what I mean? But if, like, you're already going to be buried outside of Israel, there's an idea to be buried where your family is. It's just an
Why, Gail?
I don't know. I think there's a closeness. Like, there's something about, like, they actually, you could postpone, like, you could, if it would take a little bit longer, just so you could be buried next to your mishpacha, or where your ancestors are, even where your bubis and zaydis are. It's a schus. It's a schus.
Even though, Gail, it's not a mitzvah.
No, it's not. It's not. But this is the mitzvah. Listen very carefully. This is a mitzvah. What I'm going to tell you now is really what they say deraisa, like from the Torah proper. It is very important who you get buried next to. Like,
So my father said to me that he will come and wake us up. He says, "Don't you worry. It's like zchut avot."
I'm gonna get buried next to you, so he gets mixed up and
Because he is in Harazitim. My father is in Harazitim.
Oh, okay. You see? Okay. Try real estate.
He told me, because I told him, "Why aren't you with mom?"
Yeah.
He says, "No, because at that time it was after the war.
Yeah,
When my mother passed away, it was not
No
Harazitim."
access.
Wow.
Yeah,
Could you
so
imagine
he
such a
said, "But I
story?
promise you, I will come and wake you first, all of you. I'll
Oh,
find all of you."
that's a beautiful story. Okay, beautiful. Okay, beautiful. Okay, so there is a concept to be careful with who you are buried with. So with tzaddikim, like the very, very righteous, like, it's interesting. My parents are buried, I think it's called Lampert Cemeteries. Anybody know where that is? Very far downtown. Like, it's a lot of the Holocaust survivors there, a lot of the, the shuls and the societies, I don't know, right, are all there. So it's very interesting. Rabbi Shochet from Chabad? Anybody know?
Yes,
Okay, so it's a very choshev family. They're a
he
very,
is.
very
He was
choshev.
the Av Betin.
Yes, the
Right.
Av Beit Din. So they're buried where my parents are buried, but very secluded from everyone else. Like, there's almost like a rope around the area that they're buried. So there is a concept with tzaddikim that they're very careful to bury them sort of away from everyone else. Why is that? Why is
They
that?
have that in South Africa also.
They do. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So the power will be stronger.
Okay.
Because when my father was buried, he was buried right next to it, because that's where his father was.
Okay, amazing. So it's going to be like that. It's going to be like that. So why is that? So they say an interesting idea. Again, we have to remember there's going to be something, like, there's this kind of like an energy that's still left in the bones when people pass on. There is still a part of you that stays down here. Right. And that's when we go, like, let's say I never went to the Lubavitcher Rebbe's kever in Crown Heights. Anybody here go? Anybody ever go to
I did few times.
Okay, so is it very separate? I'm imagining he's also buried very alone. Yeah, like when you go
No,
in.
yeah, but there is some people next to him. I think his wife and
Yeah, so very particular who is buried next
the
to him.
Alter Rebbe.
Yeah, so when you're going, let's say you're going to Dublin, you're going to the kever of a great rabbi, right? What do we say? That they still have, right, an energy there, right?
Of course.
You're going there. What are you saying? You're not saying to them, I'm praying to you. You're saying, pray on my behalf to the Almighty, because you, as a lover of every Jewish person, right? You look at us as your children. So just like you look at us as our children, go up, please, to the Father of all fathers, Hashem, and pray on our behalf. Now, if this Rebbe was buried next to a Russia,
he will not have that power.
They say, it's funny you said it, they actually say he would be limited a little bit.
It makes sense.
He would be limited by that Russia's energy. And on top of it, it's very embarrassing for the Russia. Like you would come and you say, "Oh, the great tzaddik." Who's that guy? Next to him. Like, I know it sounds funny, but it would be very embarrassing for the Russia, and it would be like a prosecuting angel. Like people would come. oh, this Rebbe did this and this and this. I don't even know who this guy is. Maybe he didn't, who knows what he did? Like, you know what I'm trying to say? So this is why it's an interesting idea. And it's very important. Like we said before last week, like if you have any relatives, God forbid, who want to cremate themselves, to really stand up if you can and stop that cremation, because cremation, we said, is such a negative reality that you can't even bury the ashes of someone who was cremated with intention. Like, you know what I mean? They intentionally said, that's it. Don't give me your garbage. I just want to be cremated, right? You can't even bury their ashes in a Jewish cemetery. Okay, so it's just like interesting for us to know. So the Torah actually tells you that it's good for you to have your plot bought way ahead of time. And guess what? It's a skula for a long life. Isn't that interesting? To buy a plot now and to buy it honestly with money.
When you still have your brain working.
Yeah, when you still have your brain and no one will bury you in the wrong place to the wrong guy. Do you know what I mean? Like, because in the end, I really want to tell you one of the saddest things. Okay, people do not like plan ahead for these things. Then there's nowhere to bury them. Then there's these like, there's certain cemeteries that are far down, you know what I mean? Far down Dufferin and places like that. And they're not so picky who is buried in there. So a lot of times, like you could have, like the mother's not Jewish, the father was Jewish and they bury them. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not really like 100% that everybody even in the cemetery is Jewish. So before anything happens, like I know this sounds silly, but it's not. And the Torah is telling you it's a skula for long life. It's not going to bring any ayin hara. It's going to do the exact opposite. All right. So, and it's very interesting. Like when, you know what you were just saying, Esther, you know where your father is buried, right? In Har HaMenuchos, right?
Har HaZeitim.
Har HaZeitim. Sorry, Har HaZeitim. When they sell a plot there, this is an interesting idea. They actually tell the person, you cannot sell this to anyone else. Like you have.
And they also don't sell it to not Orthodox people.
Yes, 100%.
If you're not a Dati, Shomer Shabbat,
no, you can't be buried.
there's no
there.
way you can be buried
Right,
there.
because they want it to be a very, like a place where everyone is on the same page. Do you know what I mean? And no one is going to have this advocate, negative, positive, comparing. It's people on the same page, okay? But it's a very interesting idea how they did that. They made them, because of these ideas, one, they didn't want people to buy them and do what with them?
Sell them off.
Yes, you're 100%. Like they were saying, like whatever it was 20 years ago, I think it was like $1,000. Now it is $17,000 to get a plot.
30,000.
30. Okay, and wow, it's
My
even gone up.
sister bought.
Your sister bought, and it's I believe it. I really believe it. So you imagine, like they were very smart because halachically they want it to stay even, right? And then they also don't want that people should chas v'shalom, like start, you know what I mean, making real estate deals with these things. Okay, it's just interesting for us to take a look. Okay, so now, okay, so how do we know this whole idea about you want to be with the right kind of person? So what's very interesting is that they say in Elisha, right? Elisha the Navi, who was the student of Eliyahu Hanavi, when he was buried, you know, they buried next to him. Remember, he resurrected a boy, right? What's her name? Isha Shulamit, right? Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Yes. Her son. Later, when he got older, he passed away also, and they buried him next to Elisha. And they say that he was very uncomfortable. He actually got up, whatever that means, as a spirit or whatever, and he moved to another section. He wasn't even comfortable. I know it sounds funny, being next to such a holy tzaddik. So it's just interesting. So there once was a time, you should know, like that very wealthy people would try to buy the burial plot next to a tzaddik. Like they would use their money and try to get in, right? So the marshal, it was in the 1500s. So he actually said, like, this is the worst thing a person can do. Someone has to mute. Okay, so like a very bad thing to do. You don't just buy what we call tzidkus, okay? You're not going to just buy being a righteous person, right? So I want to be next to the righteous person. I got money, so let me pay it off, and then I get to be in the righteous section. No, it doesn't work like that. How does it work? You have to earn it to be righteous. So I just want to tell you a story. Like I had heard of this like, I just want to show you who the Jewish people are, what righteousness is. I heard of this story, and now I finally got all the detail, and it's an incredible story. So Rabbi Milstein is telling the story, and he knows the people personally involved, and it's like really incredible. So I just want to get to the story, and this is the story. Okay, so there's a man in Lakewood. His name is Mayor Fischel. He's a really, really big philanthropist. Very well learned, big Baal Chesed. So once a month, he has this beautiful house, and he invites all these special needs kids. They come once a month, and they have like a big Shabbaton, and and he invites sometimes the kids to speak. So this one boy spoke, and his name, I just want to make sure I have it, Shalom Friedlander. Okay, very severely ill person. He was in a wheelchair most of his life, but he was articulate. He's still, just because you're in a wheelchair doesn't mean his mind was okay. His body was what was weak. All right. So this Shalom Friedlander, they gave him an opportunity, the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Anybody ever hear of that? I'm sure you have. It's a huge foundation. They, High Lifeline caps, tunes into it all over the world is Make-A-Wish. So most kids, when they ask them to make a wish, what's the most common wish?
To go to Disney World.
Yes, that is number one. Could you imagine? Their number one wish often is to go to Disney World. You should know, to Disney World's credit, they actually sometimes close down the whole park for a bunch of Make-the-Wish people. It's a really nice.
That's so beautiful. Yeah.
They're disabled.
They cannot wait in line.
So anyway, so it was this Shalom Friedlander. They told him, you know what? It's your turn. We're going to get this, what's it called? Fill out this form for Make-A-Wish. True story. So he made a wish, and the wish was he wanted to meet Donald Trump. This was just exactly when Donald Trump was president. This is not an old story. It's a very recent, unbelievable story. Okay.
Yeah.
His wish, yeah.
And so he met him?
No, you have to hear. So his wish was that he should meet Donald Trump. Okay. So, with Donald Trump, his whole presidency was either first impeachment or a second impeachment, or I never saw a president more hounded, you know what I mean, and more attacked than poor
like
Donald.
Netanyahu.
Yeah, probably similar. So Donald Trump, so at the end, the White House, they felt very badly, but they said, unfortunately, the president's so involved in so many things, he can't go. Anyway, the mother of the Shalom Friedlander, she asked him once, like, I'm just curious, why do you want to meet the president? So he said, I want to meet the president because I want to ask him to free Rabbi Rubashkin.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So she said, really? That's why you want to meet the president? And he said, yes. I want to ask the president to give Rabbi Rubashkin a pardon. Rabbi Rubashkin was put into prison for 27 years. It was such an unfair trial. Like, anyone who reads it knew it. And it was really a very big anti-Semitic, like, it was a woman judge, was a real anti-Semite from the South. Okay, so she was really bad. Okay, so he'd already been serving 7 years. And this boy, this Shalom Friedlander, really wanted to see that he could get out, which is like just an incredible thing. So the mother wrote a letter. Now, Rabbi Rubashkin, do you guys remember who did make a card for Jody, Rise Up for Jody? And we made this card with the Aleph Institution. So Rabbi Rubashkin was very connected to the Aleph Institution. Aleph Institution.
His wife came to our show.
Oh, really? So this,
don't you remember a long time ago?
Oh, yeah, maybe, yes.
Yeah, we supported her, and we met her.
Yeah. So this Aleph Institution, it runs in New York and here. And the person who runs it here, her name is Fegi Kass. It's put together by Chabad. It was put together by Chabad because the Rebbe has this thing: no one should be in prison. He doesn't think that being in prison will ever help anyone. Like, he doesn't look at it as something positive. So he works to help people, like, try to limit their sentence, etc. Okay. So the Aleph Institution was working with Rabbi Rubashkin and working with a very high renowned lawyer who was also Donald Trump's lawyer. So the same lawyer that Donald Trump was using was Rabbi Rubashkin's lawyer, and he was doing it pro bono. Does anyone know who it was? Anyone know? Anyone want to guess? Alan? Yes, Alan Dershowitz. Could you imagine? So this mother wrote a letter to Alan Dershowitz. And she wrote that my son wanted to meet Donald Trump so that he could ask that Rabbi Rubashkin should be pardoned. When Alan Dershowitz found, like, he received the letter, he called the mother personally. He said, I have an idea where it's really going to touch the president if it's really coming from your son. This is a true story. Okay, it's like an unbelievable story. So this Shalom Friedlander sat down and wrote from his heart how he wanted to see Donald Trump and how he wanted to ask for the pardon of Rabbi Rubashkin. True story, okay? So the letter comes to Alan Dershowitz. He took it to Donald Trump. He said, Mr. President, I just want you to read this letter. So he opened the letter and Donald Trump started reading it. He was bawling like a baby. That was Zos Hanukkah, which is like a day of miracles. And he pardoned Rabbi Rubashkin on
the last day of Hanukkah.
Yes. And Rabbi Rubashkin, the first place he went when he got out of prison was to Shalom Friedlander's house.
Wow.
Not normal story. So then this Rabbi Lefkowitz, he heard the whole story. So he went to this Shalom Friedlander and he said to him, I have a question, like, why? You could have asked for anything. Like, why ask of all things to free this Rabbi Rubashkin? So he said, because I've been in a wheelchair all my life. All my life, I haven't been able to be independent. I always have to take and take and take. I'm never able to give. So I figured I want to give once in my life. I want to be the one who gave.
Wow.
Right? So that's Bitkus. You can't buy it. Do you know what I mean? You can't buy that. That has to be worked on and thought of, and that has to come from your soul and your neshama. That doesn't come just because, okay, there's a lot of stories like that where people say, you know what, at the end, let me buy your world to come, and you go, no, I'm not selling it for for nothing. You cannot buy my world to come from me. Do you know what I mean? You cannot buy it. So this same Rabbi Milstein, he once told a beautiful story also. When his father passed away, his father wanted to be buried in Eretz Yisrael, and it was very hard for them. Like, I don't know if they had bought a plot. So like they're rushing and trying and thising and thating. And in Eretz Yisrael, once you get the body there, it doesn't matter. They're not going to let it stay overnight. It was really, really dark. And I finally bought a plot. He was saying it was like a really bitter, dark night. And they're like going up and up and up. And finally they find where to bury him. And they bury him in this place. And they have no idea who he was buried next to. No idea. Okay. The next morning they come back. Who was he buried with? His chavrusa from before the war.
Wow.
Do you imagine? That's what Rabbi Milstein said. It's an unbelievable story. Okay, so it's just like so beautiful, all these like amazing.
The tzaddikim in their life and tzaddikim in their death.
Yes, that's a good way to look at it. Okay, yes. So now comes that question, which is a big question. And that's the question of, let me just see. Oh yeah, so I just want to tell you though, here's what I want to tell you, which I thought was very nice. Like they were saying that one time the Chasam Sofer got a shaila, he got a question. What was it? That there was a man that they found him, like just found a dead body, all right? And they couldn't tell, like, is he Jewish or isn't he Jewish? One thing he did have a bris, but there are non-Jews who could have a brit.
Also have a brit.
Right. So this was like a big shaila, like, what do we do with him? What do we do with him? So they came to the Chasam Sofer and he said, we're going to be machmir. What does that mean? We're going to be very, what's the word? Stringent? Yes. Right? We're going to be stringent. So what did he say? We're going to be stringent. So what was the answer?
To bury him in the goyim.
What do you think? Try again.
To bury him with a Jew.
Yes. We're going to be machmir, because in the case that this man is a Jew, we're never going to let his soul just, you know what I mean, be in the wrong place. I thought that was a very beautiful idea. So now there's this Rebbe, the Debnetziner Rebbe. It's just interesting because this is an important question. If you have a second marriage, right, who do you get buried next to? Okay, so it's an interesting question, right? Because people do know people like that, right, who remarried and now, which way do you go? So if it was a divorce, obviously nothing. You don't have to worry about it. You divorce that person. You have no kesher to them. You have no obligation to be buried next to them. That has nothing to do with it. But what about if you're a widow, right? And then you remarry. So now Okay, so the first one, if let's say that's the person you had the family with, like sometimes you
children, the one you had the children.
had the family. Really, the truth was, you know what I mean? You're married to them, let's say 20 years, and then the second marriage was like 10 years. But the Torah says something very, very interesting. Like, we are so sensitive to people's feelings. Like, it's crazy. Like, if the person you pass on, but the person who you're married to, let's say that second person you're married to, is still alive, there's a question if it would be very painful for them, right? If you weren't, you know what I mean? Like, it could be very painful for them. So interesting. Like, it's like, really,
I don't understand.
I don't
What would be
understand.
let's
painful?
say it would be painful for them. Like, here they are, they kind of feel like, you were their husband and you were their wife, and they're still alive, right? And they're kind of looking at it as, well, when I die, I'll be buried with you. You know what I mean? But you're like, yeah. Do you see what's going on? Like, so, I mean, not that we should know of these things, but it would be a discussion that you should have. Do you know what I mean? And the Torah would be very makpid over people's feelings. So this is a true story. Another one that I think happened with Rabbi Steinbach. So what happened? I think he's the head of the B'datz, right? So he's like, so he gets all these kind of questions. And this is a crazy story. Okay, so this woman was married. The husband passed away. He was buried in a certain place, and she had the plot next to him, right? That's pretty common. She had the plot next to him. Right now they're going, it's the 6th yurt site, and they always go, the family goes together to the yurt site, to the kever, to daven there. They go, and guess what she found? Yeah, somebody else was buried in her plot. Did you imagine?
What you found?
She found somebody else was buried in her plot. Like, they for the plot next to, like, this is crazy. They played for the plot next to each other, and the Chevra Kadisha, whoever it was, made a mistake. They made a mistake.
So what they do?
In the wrong place. Okay, so what do you think is the question here? Like, what's the question?
Can you exhume the body and move it?
Yes, because on one hand, like, think about it on one hand. On one hand, this person is in a plot that doesn't belong to them. That's not a great thing either. It's like you're almost laying in a stolen plot. You know what I mean? Like, that's not exactly the best, tzaddik atmosphere, right? But what on the other hand?
Could they wait 1 year and then change it? Because I heard of something like that.
Oh, that's
destiny. God wanted it.
No, not at all.
Destiny, God wanted to have. So many different ideas. So he said, this rabbi said to the woman, if you could be a tzaddikus. That's what he called
it.
You could be a tzaddikus. Because it would be so embarrassing to so many people. You know what I mean? Like, embarrassing to exhume, and then to exhume a body is very, very hard, because the body finally is hopefully in Gan Eden. You know what I mean? Right?
And they take her out now.
Once you exhume the body, it's like the whole din starts again. It's like a whole new process, and everything is like, where am I? Where am I? So really, the truth is, when you're looking at this concept of moving into the next world, that's what you want to do. There's an expression in Yiddish, nishtahin and nishtaher. You're not here and you're not there. You don't want to be in that quasi, place where I'm not here and I'm not there, right? And that's why we're always trying to move this, move these things quickly and get the person buried and move these things, right? That's why.
So what did she do? Was it
I think that she was a tzedekah. She was a tzedekah.
If they move the body, the family has to sit shiva all over again.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
I just read.
I believe you, Joe, because that's what must be what it meant by the whole process and the whole din, and everything would start again. So it was a tremendous chesed that she did. So this is what I'm trying to show you. Like, it's very interesting. Like, in Yiddishkeit, like, even how there's like so much chesed involved, even in when someone passes on. Do you know what I'm saying?
This is to show you how holy is that person.
Yes. And how much they still kind of are alive.
They have a lot of protection.
Yes.
The Shamayim.
Yes. So how do you know, like, this whole idea of buying your burial plot, really knowing you own it, paying for it, being prepared. You learn it in Chaye Sarah with Abraham.
Im Avraham Avinu,
Really, like,
absolutely.
he's really talking, like, it's not a simple thing. Like, there's like quite a few paragraphs that are given to this idea that he buys.
This is
her
why
place
we
to
have
be buried.
Eretz Israel, because of them, that they're buried there and it's there till today.
Yeah,
The
could
art
very well
cannot
be.
tell us
It could
it
very
belongs to
well
them.
be. Could very well be. So this is what I'm trying to say. So there's something interesting, like staying on top of this and knowing, you know what I mean, where you're going and what you're doing. Okay, so let me see.
Gail, sorry, can I ask, but would it be
Sure.
different, for example, if you're taking him into Eretz Israel, because that's what they did with Yosef.
Say that again? Sorry.
Would it be different if that body was being exhumed to take to Eretz Israel, because that's what they did with Yosef, right?
Right. So they could, like, that's they're saying the only time that you should really hold off on a burial, like, let's say we're always saying do it as fast as possible. If you know you're going to get buried here in Toronto, you move fast. If you have to go and get buried in Eretz Yisrael, they say it's worth the wait, so to speak. Do you see what I mean?
But what if you were already buried, like in his situation, or for example, in parts of Eastern Europe, and then they're going to build a highway through the cemetery, and then they want to move those bodies. They don't have a choice because they don't want a highway or something to be built. Then that person is going to go through all the suffering through no fault of their own or really any of their relatives.
Right. So I'm going to tell you one thing that we did keep learning, which I thought was very interesting. Any of these glitches, right? Any of these glitches, like we said, like, if it's raining the day you have to be buried, if, something happens, like I told you that bizarre story where they couldn't get the death certificate. Okay, this person, they couldn't get the death certificate. They wouldn't let them bury them. It was a crazy story. They let them take the body out of the nursing home. But when it came to putting it into the grave, this Nebuch body was standing and waiting and waiting and waiting. So when it isn't the choice of this body, there is a kapara in this story. So if chas v'shalom, let's say, you know what I mean, something happens, like you're saying, the highway goes through, there's some reality of some kind of a cleansing and forgiveness for the person. So they said, like, let's say if a person couldn't get a eulogy, you couldn't get a eulogy, right? That's also, like, there's a pain that you're going to feel, and that pain is going to erase. It's going to help take off those klipas, right? Those hard shells that are around you. How did we say that works? It works if you accept it. Okay? That's what we have to understand. When you have tsuris in our lives, and everyone does, when you're accepting of them, when you say, you know what, Hashem, there is a reason for this. I need some kind of forgiveness. I need some kind of kapara. You say tikkun. Then Hashem says, wow, you're amazing. I'm taking off, 3 tons of garbage. 3 tons of garbage just went off. If you're fighting it the whole time, right? I don't know if that's a garbage removal. Right? That's just kicking and screaming. Do you see what I'm saying? So I hope I got what you were saying, Karen, because it was like very fuzzy, but that much we do understand. Okay. So we said, okay, so we rarely will exhume a body, rarely. Okay. So there are times where they exhumed, I think it was the Bach. They exhumed his body. He was buried for many, many years, many years, and they exhumed it to take it to Eretz Yisrael, and it was complete. Like there was nothing.
Gam achida.
Yeah, the chida. That's what I meant to say, not the bach. Oh, thank you so much. You just saved me. The chida. Okay, so what would that be? Because that's not a body that has to disintegrate. There isn't any gashmias of that body. That body has been purified by the way it lived in this world, and that body.
My mother buried next to him.
Are you kidding? Is your mother really buried next
in Har HaMenuchot? He's buried in Har HaMenuchot. Beautiful kever, like a room. He has a room.
Yes, like a room. That's what they say.
That they'll put.
Yes, they'll put them in a room,
like a shul.
Yes, like in a big tomb.
You can go in and sit there and pray for your family.
Yes, Mer Bal Hanes, and
so up the hill, walking 1 minute, you see my mother there.
Oh my gosh! Okay.
Yeah.
Halik, it's holy. Okay, let's hear from Talia a minute. Talia, what did you want to say?
You say there's 11 stops. So there's 1 stop to the kever. That's 1.
Right.
1 to
the Gehenna,
Gehenna.
lower Gan Eden.
So the lower Gehenna is next.
No, lower Gan Eden, like a lower level of.
So that's 3.
Then
No, that's 7.
levels of heaven, 7 levels of heaven, and then you're up at the highest level of.
Hold on a second. Let me count. Sorry. So
okay.
1. Sorry. So 1 to the
1
Kever.
to the Kever. Okay. 2 to Gehenna.
Mhm.
3 to the lower level of Gan Eden. 7 levels that you're going to be like trying to
Lekei Shamayim,
right,
Lekeim.
are called the levels of heaven, and then
The-
1 more up. After you've gone up the 7th, you go up 1 more, and that's the highest level of Gan Eden.
Yeah, but then don't you actually go to a lower level, because not everyone gets to stay in the
Right,
high.
everyone is going to be on different levels according to who they are, and then your children and the legacy you left can help you move up. So let's say you gave, you know what I mean, you gave charity, that charity keeps on growing, right? You gave charity towards a building. You gave charity, like they have a beautiful charity right now for Rabbi Wallerstein, right? They're asking people to buy like 100 books in the memory of Rabbi Wallerstein, and they'll give those 100 books out at a Shabbaton, at a this, at a that. That's going to keep growing, right? Everyone who reads it,
course.
read it. So that's what you see what I mean. So there's going to be things that are going to help you to keep on growing. So now I just want to get into, which is not the most pleasant part, okay? But it will depend on a few things. So when you are in this grave, right? So when you're in the grave, they say like for 7 days, there's something called, there's a cleansing, okay? Almost your first time you're in your washing machine. Okay, so you're in the grave and you're in the washing machine. So there are 4 angels that will come to visit you that will help you to cleanse. Okay, how will the cleansing work? Again, according to how physical you led your life. If you have a lot of what we call klipot, you have a lot of these shells that are around you that aren't allowing your soul to be the illumination that it's supposed to be, then we've got to break those things down. Okay, so the angel who comes, his first, the head angel, his name is Duma. Why Duma? Because he's silent. Once you're in the grave, you can't talk anymore. You can't do Hallel. You can't sing. There's a very beautiful pasuk in Tehillim, and that's what it says. Like Hashem, you know, we want to praise you, so let us live long, right? Because once we're in the grave, no one can sing your songs anymore. So this angel will come, and they're going to ask you. So guys, this is a big help. Okay, listen carefully. These angels are going to say, "What's your name?"
Yes.
What's your name? Why are they going to ask you what's your name? Because when they ask you what's your name, then they know what your essence is. They know who you are. They know what you did, and they know what you could have been. Okay? So if you know your name, then what would that show those angels?
That you're intelligent and you study Torah in your life.
Okay, and that you knew who you are. You were in tune. So when they're going to ask your name, I'm going to have to say Galilea. Okay, I'm not going to be able to say Gail. Okay, and Sandy, you're going to have to say Shandel, whatever. What is it again?
Galilea.
Okay, so you see what I'm saying? Like, so what do we do in order to be able to remember our names? We do a little practice every single day. Every time we daven,
we say it.
Shmona Esrei. Okay.
Yes, I say it. Okay,
so Esther Talkar, that is your pasuk, okay? Because you and Esther share the same name. Okay, so it's very good for everybody. If you do not know what your pasuk is, like email me and I'll help you find it. And it's a good idea to memorize it. Why do we memorize those psukim? To help us remember our names, because we can imagine that that's going to be a little bit scary. Okay.
And we put a good impression.
Yes, and the angels come and say, "Who are
you?"
You know what I mean? And you're going to be like, okay, so you're going to want your name. Okay. So by saying your name, you're going to give them an understanding.
You taught me that. You taught me this.
Yeah, it's good.
10 years ago.
Yeah, so it's good. So they're going to give you an understanding of how much of a cleansing you're going to need. Now, what's very interesting is where are we learning all these different ideas from? We're actually learning them. The Zohar learns them in the Sefer Yonah. So everybody knows that story of Yonah, like we say it on Yom Kippur. We do Yonah. Does everybody know what I'm talking about? Yonah was a prophet, and Hashem wanted him to prophesy to this city called Nineveh.
Nineveh.
Not Jews. He wanted them to do tshuva, and they would have. And they were going to, and he was very embarrassed. Like he was like, oh my gosh, if I would go to the Jews, I don't know if they would respond as fast as the Goyim. And he didn't want to have this comparison, right? So he didn't want to go. And Hashem said, oh, you're going to go. You have to go. This is your mission. But he didn't want to. So what does the Torah tell you? It's interesting what it says. How do you say a boat?
Aniyah.
Aniyah.
Yeah.
What does an aniyah let you do? It lets you float.
Follow the shark.
Aniyah, yeah, that's the story. So he was on a boat. An aniyah lets you float on the sea. So the Torah tells you that this world is compared to the sea. Why? Because there's so much more beneath it. When you're looking at the sea, you only see like what you see on top. Like you get this like superficial, okay, so the waves go back.
But when you do your morning prayers, I love that it says Hashem creates the earth on the water.
Yes.
When I was in Israel and I looked out the window, I already saw that.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So this world is considered like the sea. You're not really seeing all the depth. And you are the ani. Aniyah is the word me, ani. Okay? You. Aniyah. Yeah. So you have to know who you are to stay above this, or you're going to sink.
Aniyah is also ani with Hashem.
Oh yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. So how are you going to be able to float? It has to be aniyah. It has to be with me, with Hashem. That was amazing, Esther. So do you see what I mean? Otherwise, you're going to sink. So Yonah gets thrown into the ocean, and he gets swallowed into the grave of the whale. Isn't that interesting? So he says, like, this is all remez, it's all a hint to what's going to happen. And when he was in that whale, he's extremely uncomfortable. It's not a comfortable place. And that's when he has to do tshuva, and he has to think about what he's doing. And that's what's going to sort of happen to us. Okay.
I love this story.
Yeah. And so when those malachim are talking to us and they're like, okay, you're going to like, I got to move you around. Like they're going to sort of swing you back and forth.
They're in the fish, in the daga.
Okay. They're going to swing you back and forth. You're going to want it to stop. The only way it's going to be able to stop is if you can say who you were. Like, I know where I was. I tried to float on top. I didn't want to sink into this garbage. I knew there was something much deeper to life. You know, this is who I am. This was who I am. This is what I wanted. You see what I mean? And then they say it stops. It's just very interesting. It's very interesting for us to know. Okay. Now let's see what else I have to tell you now.
Gail?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't understand. Are you saying that you can't just say your name? You have to say the pasuk?
No, you just have to
your
say your name, but they say that people, like the reason why they tell you to do it every day with Shmona Esrei, because they say people are going to get very anxious. Like it's going to be a very scary time. So if you won't know your name, you'll say your pasuk. You know what I mean? Like either way, something's going to come out.
I think it's easier to remember your name than to remember the whole
I don't know.
pasuk.
I guess maybe it depends, because if you've been saying that pasuk every day, it might come very quickly, right? And usually the pasuk is very meaningful. Like let's say Esther. So it's Ela Barecha ve'ela v'susim v'anachnu b'shem Hashem naskir. It's such a beautiful one. What does that mean? Everyone else, they think their power and their might, right, is in horses and in chariots. But in me, I know where my power comes. It comes from calling out Hashem.
We always talk about Hashem, and it's
Right,
very
but you
true.
imagine, so that's a beautiful, like, so imagine you getting all mixed up what your name is. Like, that's perfect. You're just screaming out what your essence is. You know, Mrs. Hochman, it was Mrs. Hochman who told me for Leah, like, right? Like, Sandy, you're a Leah, I'm a Leah. There's a lot of people, their second names are Leah or first name Leah. So she said, Lishuascha kivisi Hashem.
Hashem. What's more beautiful name than this?
Yeah,
Than just say Leah.
To your hope, like Lishuascha, for your salvation, kivisi, I hope, Hashem. Do you know what I mean?
Beautiful.
So I could see, like, you know, if you're going to say a whole pasuk like that, that could be so beautiful. So it's just a good thing. In other words, I would hedge my bets. Okay, I would learn both, okay? Just in case. Okay, so Talia, you wanted to ask something. Sorry. Okay.
How do you find your pasuk? I'm not sure. Like,
Okay, so I'm gonna call me after, and we'll do it together over the phone because it's gonna be much.
It's in the Siddur, at the
It's in
end of the
Siddur,
Siddur.
and like near the end. So if I do it with you over the phone, it'll
It's
be
in the list. When you look, they say names
I think it
of
says
your name.
972, something like that, in the art.
Alright.
Okay.
In every Siddur it has.
Yes. So we'll take a look. Okay. So let me just see what happens here.
And you also can Google.
Oh yeah, you probably could. You know that you probably could. That's probably so true. You could do anything today with Google. Okay, so
Yes.
now let me see. So now there's a very great Sephardi rabbi. His name was the Machane Yehuda. He used to live in Baghdad. Okay. Okay, so he himself, he has a lot of different books that he wrote, and he used to speak to the spirits. Okay, so he would speak to a lot of the there are neshamas that their sins were terrible. He actually spoke to Shabtai Tzvi.
Wow.
Yeah, and he also did exorcisms like from people who, like things came into them that were not good. So he was the one who was very into that everybody has to know your name. You know what I mean? Like he was the one who really said he had spoken to spirits, and they said when they were in the grave, it was not an easy place to be in. And the cleansing can take up to 7 days. For some people who Nebuch are very, 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 very physical. There are people out there who lived their whole life in a physical reality. I don't think, you know what I mean? They never really had too many spiritual thoughts or too many spiritual realities. So for those people, do you know what I mean? This is not going to be such an easy time. But the reality I see of this story is the gift that Hashem wants to give everyone this opportunity. Do you know what I'm saying? Of some kind of a place in this Olam Haba. Doesn't mean it'll be way at the top. It could be in the lowest level of Gan Eden, but it will still be so incredibly joyful for them. I think when you think about it, like there's a pasuk that says like every Jew, no matter who he is like a rimon full of mitzvahs. Because I think in every Jewish heart, like they still want to give, they still want to do good. Like every one of us knows, like we all know, we all know people like they're lost in terms of their relationship with Hashem, and they've been so like inundated with so much stuff. It's so hard for them to like climb out of it. But down deep, they have like a real neshama. They have that pintalayid. They have that little spark. Do you know what I mean? And I think Hashem is like, I think it's his chesed, his rachamim, right? That, takes it through this story. And that could be for everyone. So when you're knowing your Hebrew name.
Like a Russia like Bernie Madoff?
A Russia like Bernie Madoff, if it's lahachis and he hurt people and he was a Russia, like that's very different than the kind of people I'm talking about. A real Russia Marusha, like what's his name, Epstein?
A murderer.
Yeah, like these kind of people, those are real Russias. They have a very, very, very painful, difficult reality.
Gail.
Of them. It's not easy to talk about. You know what I mean? Like it's not easy to talk about, but it's a very different reality, a very different reality, very difficult reality. I'm talking about, I think like the average, secular Jew, I really feel is very lost today. I don't know how much of a free will choice they have. Do you know what I mean? I think there's, and I could see, and even ourselves, like, let's all, like, I'm just davening, we just go through, Gehenna with the hot flash and get out. Okay. But, do you know what I'm saying? But I could see, like, I feel like Hashem, it's Rachamim, like he created these people. I'm sure he wants the best for them. And I'm sure down deep, had they known better, they would want the best for them. Are some people lahachis rishon? Yeah. And will they get their just desserts? Yeah. Especially people who made other people sin. That's a really big one. Do you know what I mean? So there's certain things that, yes, the cleansing is going to be very difficult. Gehenim will be a long time. There's something called kafakela. They could have that too. Do you know what I mean? But what we're saying is there's these stations, right? To bring you to coming out with this like pure, pristine neshama. You know what this reminds me of? Lahavdil 100 times. Remember the Wizard of Oz when they go to visit the Oz?
Yes.
It's like, and they're all dancing and singing and they go through all this cleansing, you know what I mean? And the lion gets his mane with bows in it and everything, you know what I mean? Just see the wizard. You know what I'm trying to talk about? So this is what's kind of happening. right? You are being prepared, and you would want to be. Would you want to go in to see Melech? Would you want to finally see Hashem full of your garbage? What would you want? Like, what would you want? Please take it all off. I want to have this pristine neshama. I don't want anything. Remember I told you it's like that magnetic force? You don't want anything in between the force. You want the force to be able.
You see your parents and you see your loved one.
Yeah, you're going to. But first you have to go through a little bit of stuff. You know what I mean? To be able to get it. So it's interesting. I'm just going to say this one last thing, and then Talia, I'm going to take your question. Just an interesting idea. Like they say really in Adam Harishon and in Chava, we're all of the neshamas of the future people. Like there's a spiritual DNA that's inherited from the very first man and the very first woman, which makes sense. Okay, right? If you went back and back and back and back. Unfortunately, they didn't stay pure, right? They did an Aveira, right? Their Aveira that they did change the course of history and brought death to the world and brought what we call klipas. You know what I mean? This is where it's all coming from, right? So we are trying to get rid of all of these klipas. You know what was very, very interesting? I didn't know this. It was just an interesting idea. Just something interesting. So this is like men and women, like both having the klipas and both being, they were equally responsible in this sin. All right. And they were both equally punished. So it's just interesting that, you know, that a woman has one less rib than a man. Isn't that
really?
Yeah. This is what this Rav said. He said that women have one less rib in the rib cage than men.
But is it true scientifically?
I don't know. We have to look it up. That's what he said. It just found
to ask the doctor.
We have to ask. We have to Google. Do women have one less rib cage?
They do.
But that makes no sense.
Say that again, DJ.
I said that makes no sense because the rib was taken from Adam. So the men should have one less rib.
Right.
No?
So maybe let's look it up and see if it's the man who has one less rib cage, but somebody out there is missing a rib in the rib cage.
I love rib steak.
Yeah, let me see. Okay, just want to see what else goes on here. Okay. Okay. Now there is a little bit. Okay, so you've been in this, what's it called? We're hoping we said our name. We didn't get bumped around too much. We didn't have to break off too many klipas. Then there's one more thing that happens called kaf hakela, which means they're just going to send your neshama from one side of the earth to the other side of the earth. Now, if you're a very wicked person, it doesn't stop. And you kind of, you know, which you would compare that to, lahavdil, the concept in Christianity called purgatory. And that's where they believe all the Jews will go, right? Because we don't believe in Yashka, so that's our fate. So purgatory is like a soul that never ever rests. So that's more of what, when you hear about these stories of the exorcisms, or you hear about rabbis who were talking to spirits, it's usually the people who are in kaf hakela, right? Okay, so let's just see. The vast majority of people.
So you mean like they're wandering in the cosmos?
Oh, okay. What? Yes. Wandering all over. They're wandering all over. There's like they have no rest, which you can imagine is a terrible idea. Okay, so it's called Kibuk HaKever. Okay, so that's what we did for today. And in Mirz Hashem, we're all remembering our names. We're all going to be fine. So how do you avoid all this? Let's just get real for a second. How do you avoid all this? Tshuva, right? How do you avoid all this? Living with Hashem. And not being, you know, obsessed with, you know, the latest this and the latest that, and 10-car garage and 50 cars and 60 thises, and just living for the physical. Like the more you will live spiritually, the more spiritual you will be, right? Do you see? It makes sense, right?
And day and cleanse every day, renew yourself.
And every day you want to renew, and every day you want to try to do tshuva. And that's why, like, when you're saying that Shema at night, like, really think about it. Like, yes, I really forgive people. Yes, Hashem, please help me. Yes, don't put me in a test. Like, you want to live with, what's the word? Spiritual consciousness. That's really what it is. Okay?
And the Oniyah.
Yes, on the Oniyah. You want to live on that boat, right? You want to live with Hashem, and then I can float on the sea of this world. And I can try my very best.
So one thing, Gail, on this Dumia,
That
malach.
angel, yeah.
They ask you what's your name. You also say where you were, and if you say Westmount, you pass right away to the next.
I hope so.
I know so. I'm telling you.
Okay.
It's a
so
joker. You get a good card.
You're so cute. Like, what's it called? The go to jail free or come out of jail.
Yeah, this is the top card you can pull out.
Okay. All right. I'm going to
Westmount.
stop the recording.